Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Getting to Know You. This week, I'm excited to have a guest. I actually was inspired watching The Last Jesus Time. I said, oh, I know I want Jesus, and now I can't wait any longer. I need him on because I got to talk about this last episode that I saw. Many of you know him. He's all over the parish. But please welcome Jesus Vila. How are you?
Hi, I'm awesome. How are you, John?
I'm wonderful. Wonderful. How's your Advent been so far?
It's been good. It's like most Advent seasons, a little crazy, a lot going on, and even while we're staying safer at home, it feels like the doorbell rings with a new package delivery every couple hours, and
Yes.
work is hectic. There's lots going on. It's exciting.
Yeah, we should have all bought stock in delivery drivers.
I tell you, we've got my wife's got a little basket that she puts out by the mailboxes with like treats and thank you notes and things like that for them because they're working hard.
They are. They're working really hard. Um, so I, I reached out to you because honestly, I've been aware of you, but I don't know you very well.
Yeah.
But I really love the last Jesus. I've loved the whole spirit of Jesus time, but I really love the last one, and so I want to talk to you about that later. But tell me about you. You're working. Tell me about your family. Anything you want to tell me about you.
Oh gosh. So I currently work as the administrator of the Equal Rights Division for the state of Wisconsin. We are the agency that enforces workers' rights and civil rights laws for the state. And I've been doing that since early 2019 with the new governor and was appointed by him to run that division.
Pretty
Um,
important. Pretty
and that's
important work.
it. It's a great opportunity. It's a great job. There's terrific need, and I guess I start with that because it's a nice way of sort of summarizing professionally, what my journey is. I'm an attorney by training, but I also have the public policy degree. And my last gig, I guess, before this one was at Northwestern Mutual, where for 10 years I worked as their equal employment opportunity officer. So I've always had a real interest in just not just civil rights, but how do people get along? How do we grow in that space? And how do we mitigate conflict in that space? Real passion of mine, and I'm really grateful that throughout my career I've had the opportunity to do that. Um, but I'm not just, my job. I'm an immigrant. I immigrated to Wisconsin when I was 5 years old with my family from Mexico.
Wow.
But I've lived in Wisconsin most of my life. I I grew up across from a cornfield, and when I was 18, I had to get out of there. So I went out east for school, studied at some real had the opportunity to study at some really really great places, and then ultimately when I was starting my family and starting my career, I suddenly realized that Wisconsin is actually pretty cool after all, and came back here. Joined St. Sebastian in 2000. All four of my kids are St. Sebastian school graduates. Only have two at home nowadays, and one about to leave the nest. But St. Sebastian's been a really big part of my experience, I guess, here in Wisconsin, and a really important part of my life.
That's good. I want to hear more about your family, and I want to hear more about your subs involvement. But let me go back to your work for a second.
Yeah,
So, how how did you get appointed to that position? I mean, that's just based on the work you had done already.
I think to some extent, like other things, there's professional networking and things like that that go on. Um, and sometimes it just takes the right person being in the right place and dropping your name. Uh, I I talk to young people and they ask me about professional advice, and one thing I always tell them is be aware of what people say about you when you're not there.
Mm.
And I think it was a confluence of factors in my case. Um, I, uh, I fortunately, I guess I had a good reputation for the work that I do. And I've worked with the Equal Rights Division as a consumer, I guess, as a customer for a long time. When I was in private practice as an attorney, I practiced quite a bit in front of the agency. And then at Northwestern Mutual, I was the person dealing with them from the corporate perspective. That was I was the guy who got served complaints if there were any and things like that. In fact, it was really cute. My first week on the job, and I was meeting staff, and I didn't know most of them face to face, but I knew them by mail or by interactions we had had. And one of my judges, when we met, ran into her office, came back out with a little packet of paper, and it was the decision from the first case that I had argued in the Equal Rights Division back when I started my career, and she had been the judge, and she was able to dig it up and find it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty remarkable. So,
That's,
yeah, in a lot of ways, I mean, the job feels like a culmination of a lot of the work that I've done, a lot of the skills that I've built and learned. And it's a great agency. Like I was really excited for the opportunity to lead it because of the fantastic work that they do. Um, we're one of the most, Wisconsin has one of the most productive fair employment practices agencies in the country. And a lot of people don't realize that and how much we really do to help the workers of the state. And, we have a long history too in Wisconsin. Um, it's hard nowadays, right, when we're so politically divided to remember this, but
right.
we've got a proud history of progressivism, right? We came up with workers' compensation, the idea of it, unemployment compensation. We were one of the first. We had some of the first civil rights laws in the workplace in the state of Wisconsin. So it just seems right that we'd be good at making sure we're enforcing those laws we created.
Yeah, that's good. And your in your day to day, what do you end up doing? What's that look like?
So the day to day this year in the pandemic is a little different
Right.
than what it is. Uh, and some of it, of course, I'm an administrator. I run the agency, so there are a lot of meetings about all sorts of fun subjects like budgets and strategic planning and things like that. But fortunately, I get a bit geeky about those things, which is part of why this suits me. Um, a lot of it is administrative and staying on top of those things, but we also do a lot of policy work. For instance, I was just on the phone. I sit on the governor's task force on employee misclassification. And employee misclassification is the practice where a company will classify a worker incorrectly or wrongly as an independent contractor instead of an employee,
Oh,
which has a number of risks and costs, not just to tax revenue, but also that means the worker's not getting a lot of protections.
oh,
Um, so we're doing work around how to build up greater awareness and understanding and outreach around that, as well as uh, doing what we can to discourage employers from going that route. Um, and that's the work I think that I really value most is the chance to get my hands dirty a little bit on these policy issues that I care so much about, and to make sure we're doing outreach. Um, we did we're doing, we kicked off an initiative helping out victims of domestic and sexual violence.
mm,
And it's a workplace initiative, meaning that employers set up practices, policies that if their employees are in a situation where they're experiencing domestic violence, making sure that processes are in place so that people know where they can, what kind of help they can get and where they can get help in their workplace so they can get time off, so they can know that their confidentiality is protected as they navigate through legal issues or relocation or all the things that happens. And, you know, that's the kind of work that I really value the opportunity that I get to do because you feel like you're going to make a difference on an individual basis, on a broader basis. It feels really good.
thank you for taking the time to explain that. When you first mentioned it, I think I understood about a third of it, and I understand a lot more of it now. So thank you.
Good, good.
Okay, let's shift a little bit. I'm curious about your faith. It's clear to me that you have a strong faith, and then maybe kind of bridge into your engagement at St. Sebastian's.
Sure. So cradle Catholic. I grew up in a household. Again, before the current health emergency, I used to proudly say I could count the number of Sundays that I missed Mass on two hands, in my life. Um, so in a lot of ways, like it's something that I grew up with.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of my faith, but in terms of involvement with church as well. And I had strong role models in my parents on both those factors. But the other thing that I really valued and I learned, and it's part of how I try to raise my kids now too, is that my parents really respected the idea that faith is about an individual relationship with God. A church is important, but the church is just the vehicle. It's the setting through which that individual relationship happens, and even at a young age. So um, my faith journey, although rooted in a lot of that discipline, the church-going discipline and things like that, has also been one of exploration and questioning and wrestling with things. There are a lot of things about the Catholic Church that I will complain about. Um, and I think that that's actually part of what your relationship has to be. If it's easy, then um, it doesn't quite work. But I
Absolutely.
also think that that relationship you have to be involved, you have to be engaged in one way or another. And for me at Saint Sebastian, which is such a great and diverse and caring community, you know. Uh, that has meant a number of different things. Certainly, we've been involved with the school, but I've served on parish council. I currently serve on the parish personnel committee.
Mm.
If there's an opportunity to help, you do it. And of course, now the catechism and that became Jesus Time and the Jesus Time videos.
How did tell me about how that developed?
So uh, back in January, there were some calls at Mass for volunteers to help with the children's catechism. And Miguel, my youngest son, who is in high school, I turned to him at Mass and I said, "If would you do this with me?" Like, because I knew it would be a good opportunity, and he was at a good age to start getting involved. And he said yes, and we were all set to go. We'd done the training and everything else, and then COVID-19 came along. But a couple weeks after the church was closed for masses and things like that, I got in contact with Amy Rebholz at the time
Hmm.
and said, "What do you think about a virtual model for this, where we can do some of this children's catechism? 10, 15 minutes is all
Yep.
that we were going to be doing during Mass, and let's do it on video. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate, but we can still kind of uh, keep people connected in that way." And Miguel and I got to do it together, which
It,
honestly for me is part of what I really, really enjoy about it.
it keeps getting more elaborate, though.
If sometimes we're trying not to make it that, but my kids, my daughter Rosie's reaction when I showed her the last video, which she was in too,
Yep.
she was in the song, but she just looked at me. She says, "You're putting in an awful lot of work into something like this." I said, "Yeah, but it's it." There's something about when something is fun and joyous, it doesn't really feel like work.
Absolutely.
Um,
It's clear there's a
yeah.
passion there for sure. Um, I have so many questions, but one is about Rosie and Miguel. It's like, how, I think a lot of parents would say, how do you get your kids, your, young adult teenage kids to be so engaged and willing to do something like Jesus time? I think a lot of people would love to know that secret.
I, I don't take it for granted. It's it really is a blessing. But I think I guess I would answer it a couple ways. One, as a parent, as a Catholic parent, I know that that's part of my parenting is to figure out ways to engage my kids in a faith life and help grow that. Not easy, and certainly not easy with teenagers.
Yeah.
And not just because of their sassy attitudes, but because they're busy. I mean, they got a lot going on, a lot of distractions.
It's also about the sassy attitudes.
Yeah, let's, and a lot of that they get from me, so that makes it harder, right? Like when you see it, you're like, oh, I know where that came from, dang it. But, um, but my kids are wonderful. They're the kind of kids that even if they weren't my kids, I'd want to get to know them.
Yeah.
Um, and part of that wonderfulness is that they're a little hammy. They they're fun. They like to sing. They like to dance. They like to joke around. So the key is like, are you guys willing to do that on camera? Are you willing to do that so that others can see it? And they're fairly fearless at this point. And yeah, they get it from me. I'm hammy too, and I'm fairly fearless on camera.
Yeah.
Um, and it and so that helps a lot. But so you put those things together, right? You put together the willingness to be silly and goofy, do skits and songs, but then also to have these conversations, because really that's what they are,
Absolutely.
conversations about faith, and go over the readings and things like that. They've had that all through their Saint Sebastian school experience, but I think they've also had that at home because we've made it part of our lives. So something like this comes up, I don't take it for granted, but in some ways it feels like, yeah, sure, why not? It's a natural outgrowth of kind of what we try to do.
Well, and I do think part of what makes it special is just watching the relationships and the banter between you and Miguel. Like it's so fun. There's just such a great spirit about it. But two, I have been saying for the last 9 months, the absolute most creative ministry that I've ever seen has happened during the pandemic. I mean, you
Yeah.
really, how do you engage families that aren't physically in a church anymore? It's very challenging, and this has been a great example of that. So, and it's clear you're
We
having fun with it.
we are for sure. It's hard with adults too, as you know.
Oh yeah, it is.
You know, like it is in so many ways, but it's not just church. It's everything. In my professional work, finding ways to keep people engaged and motivated, even in a job that is motivating and engaging.
Yeah.
It's harder to do online. As you can see, I'm also a musician,
Yes.
uh, and
Yeah.
being a musician in a world where all your gigs are canceled, right? Like, how do you do that? How do you keep people engaged? How do you keep yourself engaged and motivated? It's it's definitely a challenge, but you got to rise to it. You got to rise to the occasion, and if you do it, you tend to get a lot more reward out of it.
Yeah. I think there's an emotional exhaustion in the universe right now, and like things like the creative things, whether you can do a little concert online or make a fun video like Jesus Time, is just exponentially helping people's spirits. That that
Oh
that
yeah.
that's my 2 cents. I do want to ask about your music, but I would be so remiss not to talk about you as John the Baptist in the. It was just like my favorite moment, and Miguel with his French accent narrating you walking through the woods in black and white, searching for whatever. It was brilliant. It was so fun, and I will probably insert a clip of it right here.
He lives in the wilderness. He baptizes people in the river Jordan. He eats locusts and wild honey. They say he has strange clothing. He wears camel hair in the desert. Who is this man?
Ask me who I'm not.
Okay, who aren't you?
I'm not the Messiah.
Okay,
I'm not Elijah. I'm not Isaiah either. I'm the voice crying out in the desert, make way for the Lord.
Because I just
So what's important to know is that that part of it was entirely Miguel's idea. Like he was the one when because we were brainstorming, like how do we talk about John the Baptist? And he said, let's make a documentary. And my reaction to that was very much the same as the video. What are you talking about, a documentary? But the idea of the, Werner Herzog-like narration and the
loved
kind of
it.
the weird artsiness and all of that, like, once you start going down that path, you're like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
this is what we're doing.
And so, yeah, at the, I don't know, it was during my lunch one day, I grabbed, that's the other thing that happens in our house is we have wigs, we have robes and costumes, we have all sorts of stuff over the years. So I grabbed a wig, I grabbed a robe, grabbed the camera and the tripod, and I said, bye, honey, I'm going down to do some filming. And found a spot in the park without too many joggers to, didn't want to get the cops called on me
Yeah,
and just
right.
recorded some footage. But, it's fun. And like I say, it was Miguel's idea. He knew exactly like what he wanted this to feel like and everything else. And
It was.
it,
You could almost like see the development of the idea as it was. I mean,
oh yeah,
it was great. It was great. So thank you. That was my favorite. So thank you. Um,
awesome.
so yeah, you do have a lot of toys behind you, and you said you're a musician. Tell me about your music career.
So I've been a musician a long time, and like had my first band back in high school and in college. Uh, Playing in bands, helps pay for beer, as they say.
What was your first
Um,
band, What was your first band name?
as we are with a Z because it was the 80s. So it's as we are. Um,
Mine was
yeah, and
My first band name was Hemlock, which is a poisonous conifer. Um,
excellent. It's there's nothing like getting together with like-minded people and making music.
absolutely.
And and I did some music ministry too back in college. And when I first started my family, it was something I kind of put aside, sort of, but could never put aside completely. And then when my kids got old enough and I got to a point in my life where I'm like, I need to do something for myself again and for that creative side, started playing with bands again. And then the most recent part of that journey, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I decided I wanted to refocus on songwriting again.
Mhm.
And again, I had always done some of that. I've been involved with the cabaret at St. Sebastian and wrote a number of the shows and the songs there.
Yeah, great.
But this was something I wanted to do seriously, part time. I call it a serious hobby sort of thing. Um, but the stuff that I've got here, it accumulates over the years, and I try to be deliberate about what purchases I make and things like that, or how I invest in it.
Right, right.
Um, but I do. I take it seriously. I have a band now, the Front Porch Rockers. We just did a holiday live stream. But I also have a solo singer-songwriting career where just earlier this year I actually released my first solo EP, which because of the health emergency, I had to really build up my home recording skills and my ability to put all of that together and home production skills. And, it kind of becomes as much of a personal challenge
Yeah,
as it does a project.
yeah,
Um, but I'm really proud of it. I'm proud that it came together and it gets marketed into the world. And, the fact that you can go on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere else, put Jesus Villa in there and hear original music from me. That's pretty cool, I love
yeah.
that.
It's super cool. What's the name of that album?
The album's called The Lone Pine Sessions.
Lone Pine
The
Center.
Lone Pine Sessions.
Yeah, fantastic. That's good. Thanks. I've learned a lot about you today, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I have one more question for you. As you look into the future, we're spending a lot of time right now in Advent, looking forward and finding signs of hope. What are your hopes for the future, whether it be focused on the parish or the greater world?
Wow, there's a lot. There's a lot in that question.
Just a simple
Um,
question.
yeah, yeah. What do I hope for the world? Um, I have to say, I think one of the hardest parts about this last year, and there were a lot of hard things in the last year, but I think one of the hardest parts was seeing the depth of the division between people and the vitriol. Um, and people, a lot of my professional life has been about conflict and working with conflict. So
Right.
it's not like disagreement or conflict is new. Um, and it's been around. It has certainly led to violence before and all sorts of things. But there's something that just feels different right now about the way we interact with each other. I think my hope for the future is that we would learn how to disagree in a loving way, right? Like,
I love that.
um, we have to stop worrying about like how we can win at things and arguments and stuff like that, and instead figure out how do we love each other, and how do we love each other when it's hard to love each other. Like that's the point, I think. And I don't know. There's a lot in the world that's made it harder, but that's what my hope is that we shift the focus into that space. How can we really come together and figure out, how do we grow from that?
My mom has an expression that she uses, and it's "Would you rather be right or would you rather be loved?"
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And sometimes I want to be right, but
Well, the way I figure it is I'm right regardless of whether I'm loved. So let's just focus on the love thing.
beautifully said. Thank you. I appreciate the time that you've given to us this morning, and look forward to having people see this, and definitely blessings on your journey.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. I've been enjoying these videos.
Good.
It's a nice way to stay in touch with the community even while we're at sheltering at home.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Jesus. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
John.
Bye.
Bye.